Welcome to The Disappearing Mind, a unique podcast helping you find clarity and support along your dementia journey. Now, join National Dementia Trainer and Coach Dawn Platt for an all-new episode.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. I'm your host, Dawn Platt, and I'm very happy to be with you once again to talk about a subject that I'm very passionate about. Today in the studio, I have with me Melissa. We're in the studio for the second time, and welcome, Melissa.
Hi, thank you for having me again.
It's so nice to have you. Let me set this up for our listening audience. So we're talking about a daughter navigating her father's dementia diagnosis and supporting her parents while maintaining her career. So Melissa is into this mid-level, but still pretty young in this walk. Today, we're going to talk about everything in and around that, what she's experienced, a little bit about both of her parents. And the title of today's topic is When the Caregiver Needs Care, A Daughter's Journey with Dementia. And again, this is a real story. I think you'll be able to relate to it. So let's just get into it, Melissa, by you tell us a little bit about your father and his diagnosis. And then we feel like that he's in the early mid stages of his diagnosis. So take it away. Tell us your story.
Yeah, thank you for having me. He was diagnosed in November of this past year, but we really knew for a while that it was looking like he had Alzheimer's. He's someone that has had hearing loss and his eyesight has declined, but he was showing signs of Alzheimer's. So it was not a surprise to us when he was diagnosed, but it's still been a hard journey to accept it. And on top of that, at the same time, my mother was having health issues. So she was always his caregiver. She had shifted into that role for a good while now. And when it became difficult for her to the point where she couldn't care for him, it was just a whole new dynamic. And my sister, I have two sisters, one in New York, one that lives locally here about 45 minutes away, but I live closest to them. We pretty much had to go into crisis mode in order to figure out how to navigate caring for both of them.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your father and your mother, about their careers, their path, what the family dynamics were between them.
Yeah, my dad is a retired New York City police officer, and my mother had always worked in schools and then later in life found her passion with teaching English as a second language to adult students, actually. And they've been married coming up this month, on June 20th. 60 years.
Wow.
Yes.
60 years.
60 years.
Wow. So was your mom always kind of the doter and the caregiver kind of mom?
She was. She's a tough cookie, though, too.
She is.
She is.
Okay.
I think a lot of that probably came from her upbringing. Her parents were actually divorced, and she saw her mother being very strong and stepping up in the main role in the home. And then my own mom, with my dad working many hours as a police officer and being alone with the children. My two sisters are actually 13 and 15 years older than me. Majority of his career, they were pretty young.
Yeah.
He retired when I was about 6 or 7. So I had kind of a different life with them than they did. So she did have to step up. I mean, they did have traditional roles where she did make dinner. She was the one that was primarily taking care of the kids. And
who was the
nurturing.
disciplinarian?
It's funny, even though he's the tough guy, I would say in a way my mom was. Like you would know that he was angry or upset, but she would probably be more of the one that was a stickler. And
so they probably shared the role. Okay, great. So you grew up where?
Grew up on Long Island, New York. But moved to Southwest Florida in, I was 13.
Okay, 13 years old.
31 years ago, I think. Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the initial challenges and the diagnosis. So can you share, you spoke about it, getting the diagnosis, but you kind of already knew. What are some of the scenarios we talked about in another podcast, the Halloween incident, but what were some of the things that were leading you up to not being surprised, I guess, when you got some sort of diagnosis?
Yeah, he had a couple of times where he would go to an appointment on his own,
Mm-hmm.
and he ended up having to call my mom to ask how to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So there were a few signs like that. Later on, I believe this might have been after the Halloween incident. They were over at my home for Thanksgiving, and he would often kind of get agitated if their dog was not with them and feel like he needed to get home to the dog right now.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And he did actually take off in the car that time too to drive home, which they don't live far from me. They're 10 minutes down the road, but it was scary. It was dark. It was nighttime.
Mm-hmm.
We took off in my car to follow him and got to the house, and he wasn't there. So he was actually driving around the neighborhood, unable to get to their house. He made it all the way to the neighborhood, but then was circling.
Oh, wow.
So there was a few incidences like that where it really got serious, where you're like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
he cannot drive anymore.
So did your dad experience any personality changes or any behavior changes from his norm?
He was always someone who was very unemotional.
Mm-hmm.
And with certain things that have happened recently, him realizing that he couldn't drive, giving away his car,
Mm-hmm.
he became very emotional about those things that he wouldn't have in the past. Definitely seeing more irritation, or as you push him to do things, acting frustrated, acting like, oh, I did that. For instance, a big challenge has been trying to get him to shower or shave.
Mm-hmm.
And he believes that he is doing that.
Yeah.
And he will say, yeah, I do that every night.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how have you been handling that?
Oh, it's been a challenge. We're still in the midst of trying to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
My mom, as we'll talk about some more, has had some of her own health issues.
Yeah.
So she's unable to really help him shower as much as she needs to. So we're in the midst of finding a caregiver to help with that part, because it's gotten to the point that it's needed.
So do you think he'll be accepting of that? And is that going to be a male or a female?
My mom is looking for a male, but I don't know what's going to be worse. And I'd love your advice on this. How do you get someone?
I think you have to kind of navigate that step very carefully and kind of try it out and see what's accepting. You're going to have someone who is able to kind of convince him, not dialogue. You need to take a shower. You don't need to take a shower. It's really more of setting the scene. You're going here, or we're getting ready for this, so let's go ahead and get a shower, instead of, do you want to take a shower?
Okay.
This is a good time to take a shower, or I want to help you with a shower. Because obviously, again, you're looking at not only his manhood, but his independence in general. So it really has to be that person that can really navigate trust with him. And I think when you find that person who's just kind of a smooth operator, I think you'll find it a little easier. Now, what I will say is that nobody has died from not taking a shower. Others around them might feel like that, but if push came to shove, I wouldn't push the issue. And people have lived long lives taking a bird bath. Really, it's kind of a pattern and a routine without reason, meaning that we don't really have to have a reason. We don't have to direct, Melissa, you need to take a shower. Okay, right there, I've already put you on offense because you think you stink. So things like that, how you approach it, how you navigate it. Look at your dad's history. How has he done it before? You said night, so I'm assuming that your dad took showers each night. He wasn't a morning shower, or he didn't take a bath. Those things are important. What's important to him when he navigates the restroom? Is it music? Does he have everything laid out? Is he comfortable? So obviously, we don't want to derobe him and have him
feel uncomfortable.
He still has his dignity and his pride. And really, we have to be careful to maintain that dignity, that choice, and with respect. So there are ways to do that, I think, by building relationship first. And that's going to be key in whether or not this person, whether it's male or female, is accepted.
Okay.
And that may change, but routines are going to be important for him. So I would make sure and get someone at least who is flexible, someone who can easily build that relationship quickly with your father. And I think that that will be key in making that decision. with that, we talked about kind of the doctor, but was your dad, was he already in the healthcare system, like routine and all? Did you have to navigate the healthcare system to get this diagnosis, or was he already with a routine doctor and your parents went periodically and you sought that doctor for more advice? How did you navigate that?
He was already with his GP and he was referred to a neurologist through him.
Mm-hmm.
He's never really fought going to his doctor's appointments, luckily.
Right.
My mom's more the one that would rather put things off,
Sure.
not know until it comes to a head, like what happened to us.
Was the primary care physician, was he indicating to the family that dad had some sort of dementia, or?
I think he was seeing the signs, but it was more my mom asking him for referrals to get that process started. And it felt like a long process because there's a lot of tests that you need to do.
Yeah.
The psychological evaluation was towards the end. It just felt like a really long time to get to that diagnosis.
Right. So he referred you to a local neurologist. Did he
Yes.
refer you to a memory care clinic or anything like that? Or
No, just a
okay.
neurologist.
And did you have to ask these things, or did the doctor navigate that for you?
I'm pretty sure my mom had to ask.
Okay. Okay. And so that's really important for our audience to know. You have to ask questions. You have to request things. You really have to navigate. I think the flip side to that, Melissa, is that they don't know what they don't know. They only know who's presenting in front of them. And perhaps dad presented very well. So it's not always apparent unless you run through a battery of tests, look at the whole picture in order to make a diagnosis. They don't see what your mom sees and what you eventually begin to see. So that's really important that we keep notes. I tell families, keep notes, keep a little diary of these little instances and when they were and why they were and what happened, because it's important in kind of building your case, and it supports the physician in the steps and recommendations and referrals that they make. So that's going to be really important. After your father was diagnosed, you guys kind of knew it, but were there initial steps that you took following the diagnosis?
Honestly, no, because we were in the midst of my mom's health issues that were more pressing, what felt like more pressing.
Right.
At
Tell
the
us a
time.
little bit about your mom's health problems. And your mom was the primary caregiver, pretty
Yes.
much has been supportive.
Yes, she was driving when we decided he couldn't drive anymore. She was taking him to all of his appointments. So when she started having a multitude of issues and not able to drive, and then she eventually ended up in the hospital. It was a whole new challenge. She has osteoporosis as a result of having breast cancer many years ago, and medication she was on caused osteoporosis, and that has caused her to have many vertebrae fractures.
Oh my.
So that was the most recent thing that happened. She had a fracture, then started having stomach issues, and then it turned out she had diverticulitis. All of this was coming to a head. She was really not able to get around, and came to a head one night where she called an ambulance because she unfortunately couldn't lift herself off the toilet. And her phone was not with her. She was calling my dad. He was not hearing her. And it took many hours for him to come in, either to check on her or for him to use the bathroom himself. And he realized he got her phone. They called 911. So from that point, she ended up in the hospital, and it turned out she had had a heart attack a week before.
Oh, wow.
And I think just due to all the stress, she wasn't really eating because of her stomach issues. It was very frail, very weak. So it was a lot. So then
that all happened at once.
It all happened at once. So she ended up in the hospital, then ended up a week later with C. diff. And then it turns out that she had perforations in her colon and needed an emergency colon surgery.
Oh my goodness.
So she ended up being in the hospital between the hospital, and then she moved into the hospital's rehab and then skilled nursing. So she was away from home for 3 months.
Oh my goodness. How did you navigate that? How did you, all of a sudden now you have mom in the hospital, in rehab, in skilled nursing, and then you have dad. How in the world did you, like, it was all on your plate at one time. How did you as a family navigate that?
Yeah, it was really hard to know what to do or how to do it. When she first went into the hospitals around the holidays, and my sister as a teacher was off. So we it was kind of like taking it day by day, week by
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
Her boyfriend stepped in and helped. He had flexibility to be able to just come and stay during the week.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would come over to help with dinner, take over for the weekend so he could go home and get things done. So then we were just kind of taking shifts.
How did you decide which parent was priority?
At the time, my mom definitely was. It was scary.
Yeah.
What was going to happen to her.
Mm-hmm.
So then we were juggling being able to take the time to visit her, take my dad to visit her when he's become not so steady on his feet either.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Using a wheelchair in the hospital to take him in. And it's funny because then my mom she wasn't used to seeing him in a wheelchair, but walking through the hospital is a long walk.
It's a long walk, yeah.
And she's like, oh, what happened to both of us? And
oh, no.
it made her sad almost to have him come to see him like that.
Sure. So how did your mom being gone and your mom's illness impact Dad?
Mm-hmm.
Was he able to understand what was happening?
He would, but he would say things like, oh, it's been a long time that she must be coming home soon.
Mm-hmm.
We try to explain to him each step because every day it felt like something new was happening to her. And every once in a while, though, he would say, where's mom? Or if I would come over, he would say, oh, were you with mom? Where is she?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was hard having to explain that to him again, that she's at that point. I feel like he started asking those things once she was in skilled nursing. So she was closer, but we still didn't have a definite date.
Yeah.
To tell him, okay, she's coming home in 1 week.
Sure.
But then once we did have a definite date and we told him, he was really sweet, really excited to have her come home.
Yeah. So you're shifting roles and responsibilities. You're now the daughter parenting your parents. It's all coming at once. So let's talk a little bit. And this is something that is so common. It's something that happens to many, many families, and your mom is no different. The caregiver is not caring for themselves, or the caregiver suffers in their health beyond the degree that dementia progresses. I don't know how else to say it. Alzheimer's disease is called the long goodbye. There's so many factors in how long you have it from diagnosis until demise. There's so many factors involved in that. And each stage is different for the individual, depending on a whole lot of factors, including environmental factors, support, nutrition, what we call premorbid diagnoses. So things that contribute. So with that, your mom was your dad's primary caregiver. Now she's had some health issues of her own. How has her failing health affected this whole dynamic and your thought process going forward?
It's honestly made it almost more difficult once she came home because we knew that she couldn't take care of him like she was before, and she shouldn't be.
Right.
Or not even just him, just the household. She can't be taking the garbage out. She can't be unloading the dishwasher, even though she tries to, because she could end up with more fractures. And she's not stable on her feet. She's using a walker, and it's been really hard and heartbreaking to see that. And he feels like she's not able to push him to get up and get dressed, or he won't listen. I think for her, that's been the hardest part. She thinks that it's him not listening when it's not him intentionally trying to be difficult. She gets frustrated.
Who's taking out the trash? Who's doing these chores?
That's me.
That's you?
When I come over.
Okay.
Or we have been able to find someone a couple of days a week for just a couple of hours during the week. So she will. On the weekends, I feel like it's myself and my sister doing a lot more of the cleanup. We talked about this in the last episode.
Right.
They had a dog that passed recently. And as sad as it's been, that's one relief, one thing off their plate. He was an older dog. He was having accidents. That's not something that they could handle. We had someone coming early in the morning, a neighbor, to walk the dog. My dad was always the early bird, and he would get up and take him out, and that was like his duty, and he wasn't doing that anymore. So that was really hard and frustrating to my mom as well.
How has your dad's routines changed? Does he have a structured routine throughout the day, or?
Honestly, it's not great. He doesn't get up like he used to. Like I said, he was the early bird. He would get up, he would get ready. They both are just kind of resting for a lot of the day until she makes him get up and get ready, or there's an appointment I'm taking him to where he has to get ready.
So your dad has really lost the ability to initiate tasks.
Mhm.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. What is your advice for it when you
Well,
get to that stage?
well, I think that it's important to remember that routines are supportive to cognitive loss. And so, as much as possible, if you could set some kind of structured routines, and it doesn't have to be a lot, but bedtime, the time that they get up, the time that they have their meals, the time that they take their medicine, go for a walk, engage in something, I think is really important because that structure builds a number of things. It helps him feel a little bit more secure about what's happening,
Mhm.
but it also builds this rogue routine that helps them feel safe, feel in control, builds that familiarity. So I think that that is important. Whatever that might be, little chores or little activities or something that could build routine for him.
Okay.
One of the things that people with dementia often suffer from is that more rapid loss of cognitive ability. And it's kind of like going to the gym. Like if you don't use it, you lose it. People that are engaged in other things like socialization, or let's say they go to adult daycare or something like that, they have friends visit and take them to coffee twice a week or whatever the case might be, really actually do better because they're not so prone to get their days and nights mixed up. And there's social engagement, which really promotes cognitive reserve, a lot of different things. So even if you had someone or some kind of routines that he engaged in, it's going to be really important than him just sitting around all day watching television or watching the news or not having any routines. Kind of like what we do when we get lazy and want to stay in our pajamas and read books on a rainy day. It's okay for us because we're busy other days, but keeping his mind engaged is going to be hugely supportive in his cognitive stability, especially if he can give back, whether it's conversation, socialization, opinions.
Okay.
Those things are important.
What if he's not so much of a social person to begin with? So,
Okay. So when I say socialization, I'm really talking about interactions
Mhm.
that are conversational. So that can be with one person, it can be with you, it could be with a friend. It doesn't have to be a large group,
Okay.
right? But kind of tap into some of dad's biographical history and what did he do leisurely or occupationally that he might still like to look at or talk about, whether it's his career, whether it's a hobby he had. You know, he doesn't have to be able to do the hobby to be able to talk about it
Okay.
and reminisce. Maybe it's family trips that you took, something that focuses him on building and maintaining memories, if that makes sense. So
Yes.
it could be something so simple as looking at a photo album and talking about different pictures in there, that kind of thing
Okay.
that are important. So let's just talk about navigating resistance to care. You have dealt with that. You've talked about it, and I want to talk about it today. You shared with me that your parents have at times been reluctant
Mhm.
and even resistant to change and care at times. So I want you to tell us about that, but I want you to remember that people are independent and we grow up and we're not used to people advising us and telling us what to do. Like we're adults. So it's really no different for your parents, you being the child. So it's perfectly normal to have some of that. But tell us about what kind of resistance to care or reluctance to maybe be open and honest to say, especially with your mom,
Mhm.
that we need this or we need that.
Yeah. I think she's just having a hard time accepting
Mm-hmm.
that she's old.
Right.
She's 80, turning 81, and he's 82, turning 83 in August, both of them in August. And this has really thrown her for a loop, having these major health issues. She feels it's strange to have people come in the house and help.
It is.
So it's been a big adjustment and just trying, to tell her this is only temporary or the extra help you need is only temporary, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
That's been the biggest struggle. She's just so independent. She's not someone that is open to asking for help often.
Have you looked at options such as a health coach or counseling for your mom that she could talk about how she's feeling. I mean, I think it's pretty normal how she's feeling. And when you're independent, you're independent. So sometimes talking to a professional is helpful. And maybe she look at the options and then she navigate the decision making. Have you thought about trying that?
No, I think that's a great idea. Can you talk more about what a health coach would do?
Well, I think that we would have to navigate counseling that's out there and available, maybe look in the market to see. Obviously, your mom doesn't have dementia. My background is dementia coaching, but someone who really is experienced in healthcare navigation, understanding it's stressful to age. So maybe an aging professional, a psychologist that specializes in aging adults, navigating that. We still want to be in control, right? I mean, we can have options. And what I advise families, see what the options are in your area, see what the senior services are in your area, and then write them down and make a decision. Maybe it's as simple as your mom talking with a professional neutral party about these decisions. Some decisions need to be made. Here are your options. I mean, maybe she would receive that better.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. It would kind of give her that sense of control. I mean, you don't want to give up control. You won't want to give up control. I won't want to give up control. And I think that she knows she's aging. I mean, she probably had a pretty good scare, but she also needs to have that place, that safe place where she can voice that and then say, but here are the options and this is what I'm choosing to do about it. I think that that's a whole different kind of approach.
Yeah, I think in their generation too, they are not used to sharing what's going on. Everything was, everything's great. It's fine. You don't tell people your problems.
Right. Yeah.
So even the idea of a therapist, I highly recommend everyone go to a therapist. I go to a therapist and I have talked to her about that. Would it help to talk to someone? And she just kind of feels uncomfortable with that idea.
Well, you could broach it in a little bit different way. Maybe not call them a counselor, but maybe call them a health coach or in that fashion. It's just really a perspective. So we're talking about someone here that understands life balance. It's not like a psych visit and balancing health, life, and in your case, work. I just think it's an alternative. Honestly, I don't know what's local in the market, but I think it's worth investigating and maybe asking around to be able to give your mom that outlet to talk through things.
Yeah. She opened up last night and said it is very hard just being in the house all day.
Yeah.
She can't get around, so then she can't take him around. And then on top of that, they've lost their dog recently in the last month.
Yeah.
So that was sort of their outlet where they always took him to the park every day. I mean, she hasn't been doing well, but before that, they lost a lot of their routine and their normal schedule.
Yeah. So they've lost a lot of life and not of their choosing. So if you think about that loss, there's a mourning, there is a grieving that people go through when life changes. And some people navigate it well and others not so well. I think it's important to be able to talk about it. So with that, your mom's talking to you. How does she respond to your sister and yourself when you advise them about care or any other situation?
She has to be in the mood to talk about it. You can't push her when she doesn't feel like it. Last night in particular, I feel like my sister was pushing things a little too much with her. She'll shut down.
Okay.
But she has been investigating some care options, especially for the showering part. She's realizing, okay, this is out of her control. She needs help.
Okay. So she has to come to the conclusion. I think that's what I hear you saying. And so having options to consider might be important because there comes a breaking point, I think. And you may not want to do it this month, but next month you may be in a whole different situation. So I think that's important, especially because you're talking two parents here. One has dementia, one doesn't. I think that that's important. So I want to kind of move now. I created some tips. I probably won't get to go through all of them. I think one of the things is open communication. We have to listen actively, take time to listen to our parents or our loved one, to their concerns and feelings and validate that. We've talked about validation before, how important it is, and about receiving care. It is odd to have someone come into your home.
Mm-hmm.
It's really odd to have someone bathe you.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it. Nobody really wants to do that. I don't want somebody to help me get dressed. I just don't. And so you have to think about that kind of loss of independence and how it must feel. We have to understand their perspective and acknowledge we understand their perspective. It can help to address specifics. So try and acknowledge that and say, Mom, I understand how you feel. And even with your dad, validation is used readily in cognitive therapy. I understand how you must feel. That's just a statement. It brings down that wall. And I think it's important. I'm being heard. Everybody wants that. I think expressing concerns gently. You mentioned the scenario with your sister. Perhaps she didn't approach it gently, and everybody responds differently. If you come at me strong, I'll come back at you. But if you come at me gently, I'm going to at least hear what you say. And I think overall, people can tend to kind of be that way. But clearly and calmly explain your concerns about their well-being and why additional support might be beneficial. It's not telling them, it's not demanding, it's offering solutions, which I'm sure your mom wants solutions. I work from home a lot too. I work a lot more hours from home, and I'll go through the day or days and realize I haven't been out. So these are things that could be important. And maybe there's a way your mom could get a little change of scenery every now and then, which would be great in helping her cope. Empower them, okay? Involve them in the decision making. Here are some possible solutions that you want to talk about. Allow your parents to be part of the decision-making process regarding their care. This can help them feel more in control and be a little less resistant. I mean, Nobody wants their children to kind of have to do the things for them. We don't even tell them certain things because we want to guard them and protect them. And so that doesn't really go away. And it sounds like your mom is a pretty strong woman. Putting some of that back in her court would be important. Offer choices. Present them with options of care or options of choice. And whether it's home care or whether it's a health coach, community services or whatever, and just talk about what the benefits might be if they wanted to try it. So nothing is permanent. Nothing is concrete. Let's try it. And if it doesn't work, that's a whole lot more palatable than telling them, you need to do this. Mom, you need to do this. So educate and inform, share information, providing information about benefits of receiving care, such as improved safety or health or freedom, opportunity to maybe go out or do something, provide quality of life. I think that that's important. It's important for mom. Dad's not knowing what he's missing, probably. Introduce these ideas gradually. Don't dump on her and don't set her up. Be sure that your sister and her are not ganging up on her. What I mean by that, I know you're not. But don't make it appear that way. Don't make it appear like you and your sister have schemed this and talked about this forever, and now you're bringing it to mom.
Yeah.
Right.
She's felt like that at some point.
I got that. I kind of got that.
Last weekend, a cousin was visiting. She went through a long time caretaking for her mom, so she has a lot of knowledge. But my mom felt like, okay, you didn't set her up to come here and talk to me about this and that, did you?
Exactly. And I think there's something in a statement, you need to do this, Melissa. You need to do this. I know, because I took care of my mom. You need to do this. So there's no choice in that. It kind of makes you feel like maybe you haven't done something right or done everything you could. So it's a little bit different when you go, hey, I had a friend who did this for her mom. I think it's worth looking into. Here's the information. Maybe it would be beneficial to you. Your mom knows she needs help. Like she knows that she needs support and help. She doesn't know what it is. And people coming into your home, I did a whole podcast on that. You got to be ready for that. Whether you like it or not, they're coming to help you. You still clean your house. You still get dressed, and you might even fix your hair.
That's
for people coming to help you.
She even feels like for someone to come with my dad, she said, well, I'm still going to have to get him up and get him ready and all that. And I said, well, no, they can help with that part.
She's not going to be caught No, she is not going to be caught like that. Not your mom. Your mom is too independent. You have to have some facsimile of being in control. And people just feel that way. This is my home. This is my domain. What it looks like is kind of my responsibility. And I went through that with my own mother. Oh, they're coming to help. Oh, okay. Well, how much help do I have to put out before they can come to help? I mean, it really rolls that way. So really important. Seek professional guidance. Okay. So we talk all the time. It's a scenario to talk about in your work support group, but it's also look for options. The health coach, look for those kinds of things that would help your mom lead her to her own decisions. I think that that's really important with her. Using a third party vendor that's acceptable to your mom. You might try a third party vendor and you might go through hopefully not more than one or two people that just don't fit. And then you find that person. So with my mom, there was a caregiver, there was a bather that just my mom would light up when she came. And I was always hopeful that I could get her. We weren't that thrilled with all of them. And we just had to make our way through. Same way with nurses, that kind of thing coming into your home. Focus on the positive. I think that that's important for you. Highlight the benefits, emphasize how receiving care or help can help them maintain their independence and stay in their own home longer. I mean, that must be a thought for your mom. Has she talked about that?
Oh yeah, she thinks, oh, you're ready to send me away, send
Of
us
course.
away. She'll say to my dad, if you don't shave, if you don't get in the shower, they're gonna put us in assisted living.
Okay, so these are fears. She's voicing them. How do you respond to her?
Oh, I mean, sometimes not in those moments when
Right.
she's saying that, but in those moments, I'll talk to her about maybe memory care would be best for him. And she'll say, well, no, I'm not going to do that to him. There's such a stigma. I'm not going to do that to him. I wouldn't want someone to do that to me, to do that to me.
Okay, so your mom is really at a bridge and she needs to have an opportunity to vocalize.
Yeah.
I think that what's come out of today is really looking at a health coach or looking at that voice for her, not so much a support group, but just for her to be able to hear herself talk and have some control in decision making.
Yeah.
I think that that's going to be important. And then reframing the conversation. Look how far you've come. I mean, really, look how far. You never thought you were going to make it. It was crazy going through it. But instead of focusing on what they can't do, highlight the things that they can do and the options that they have. And just part of really living and part of life. I think it's important that we have that conversation. Have you thought about using technology like healthcare monitoring or things like that in the home?
I haven't. Can you talk more about that?
Well, I think that the introduction of technology is something that can help with wellness. And that's anything from what they call telehealth to telemonitoring. So a device that makes sure that they're up every day, checks their blood pressure, makes sure they've taken their meds. A lot of home health companies have that where somebody kind of monitors the routine all the way down to like a granny cam. Or do you have cameras in the home where you can see them? I had in-home cameras for my mom so that no matter where I was traveling, that I could pull up the app and I could see what was going on in the house. It just gave me that comfort. I could even talk to my mom wherever I was. Virtual assistants, so check-ins, a wellness check. There are some companies that offer that kind of support, knowing how they're doing. I mean, that's kind of peace of mind. I know you're close and you do some of that, but I think one of the things I will tell you is that having other professionals consult in my mom's care was very important for me, even though I ruled the roost, right? You know that I called the shots. They made me look at things that maybe I didn't want to look at. And they helped me come to better conclusions in my mom's care. I'm very thankful for that partnership and guidance. I don't know if they are, right? But it helped. It helped. They would look at things and say things that maybe I would refuse to look at. I mean, we all have a little bit of denial going on, but these are just some of the things. We've talked about the health coaching. We've talked about some kind of camera or telehealth kind of, and I'm not talking about telehealth as they see their doctor there, but just some kind of check-in. I haven't followed all the monitoring systems. I had them and worked with them in the early days, but there is that kind of home monitoring for health. Is my mom up? Is she on the floor? And then just the camera and app. I mean, that is so easy to put into place. And the app is right on your phone and you can just look at it and check in on a mom and check in on dad and just being able to see them that they're functioning. I actually had a scenario really several years ago. I want to say 2010 to 12, somewhere in there, with a family who had 2 daughters. Mom had dementia. She lived alone. And one daughter was ready to place mom in assisted living, not in memory care, in assisted living. And the other daughter wasn't. She lived out of state. She refused to see mom's decline. Mom was so good at confabulating. And so they put cameras in and realized that after the caregiver came and went after breakfast, mom sat in one chair the entire day until someone else came. Yeah. They would have never known that. Mom could not function. She didn't open the blinds. She didn't close the blinds. She didn't get up and get a drink, nothing. She just pretty much sat there lost. And it took the cameras for the daughter to realize that her mom was rapidly declining. And so it's going to give you that bird's eye view and really kind of peace of mind. So let's just start to close the podcast. And I want to close and just ask you honestly, this is for you and for I and for our listening audience. So what emotional challenges, and you alluded to it earlier, have you faced in seeing both your parents' health decline? Are you doing enough for them?
Doesn't feel like it.
I knew you were going to say that. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, it feels like if it were up to me, I would just get things in place for them. But as you said, there's a lot of talking and making sure that she feels like she's part of the decision. And it's overwhelming.
You would fix it.
Yeah, I want to be able to just fix things quicker.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of people go through that, including me. Everything isn't fixable. And I guess the obstacle in being the child caring for the parent, or being the spouse and now being the caregiver, is that we have to remember the individual and the fact that they're adults. And as long as they can make decisions, they should. And we will know on the journey when we can kind of take that away. But if we take it away too early, we risk hard feelings, arguments, resentment even. That's one of the hardest things. And I was slow in that. I was slow in, really, we all want our parents to make their own decision, right? My mom always made her own decisions. She was a very independent woman, but then she couldn't. Although I would make the big things, I wanted her to make little decisions because I didn't want to take away her 60 leather coats. I really didn't want
60 leather coats?
60 leather coats. My mom had 60 leather coats living in a tropical environment. Wow. You can imagine. Yeah. Love leather coats, love clothing in general. And she just over the years collected these fabulous leather coats. I mean, they were, but ridiculous to have 60, but she loved them. I wanted her to pare down and she couldn't. I wanted her to make that decision and she couldn't. When we moved her over time, there was no room for 60 leather coats. Okay. Right. I had to essentially get rid of them. And it was a big traumatic issue for her. Well, she knew something was different. Now, she did create a villain who stole from her. It wasn't me. No, no, it wasn't. But in all reality, it was. And so nobody wants to make those decisions. Nobody, none of us. And so I think that it's important that we do look at each phase. Are they capable of making good decisions, or do I need to step in and make these decisions for them? That is a huge responsibility for any loved one to make and to not take lightly. So I applaud you. Your parents are very fortunate to have you as a daughter.
Thank you.
I happen to think you do enough. There's no cure for aging. There's no cure for dementia. And healthcare in general, inside or outside of dementia, is not an easy place to walk.
No.
I think you do a good job, better than you give yourself credit for.
Thank
So,
you.
any last minute advice that you want to give our listening audience?
Oh, I would say maybe the hardest part has been the anticipatory. Wait, how do you say it?
Anticipatory
Anticipatory grief.
Yeah.
It feels like it comes on so quick, and
Mm-hmm.
how to accept that. So, would you have any last minute advice for how to come to acceptance?
I think that it's one step at a time. This is a journey. And I'm not one to say, hey, this, and that's going to happen, because it may not, but it could. And so I think that you take one day at a time, one step at a time, and deal with what's in front of you and relish the moment, because tomorrow's not guaranteed and you don't know what your journey will turn out to be. So I think that that's most important. Change is coming. I will deal with it as it comes.
Mhm.
And I'm not alone. I have support in and around me. That's really
Yes. No,
it in a
that's true.
nutshell.
Asking for help,
Mhm.
using that support system,
Talking about it.
talking about it.
Realizing you might make some mistakes and giving yourself the grace to do that and just keep stepping up.
And giving yourself a break every once in a while.
Yeah.
That's something I was so go while we were in this crisis mode,
Mhm.
that when it stopped, it was almost easier as we were in crisis mode. Then
Yeah.
I feel like the sadness and the grief has really come on. So I try to take a step away, go visit friends, try to plan something fun when I can, make sure that my sister's able to come check on them. I'm not just
Sure.
leaving them there, but it's easy to get your whole life wrapped up in their life,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but that's not good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me today. And I just want to say to the listening audience, as I always do, I hope that our conversation today has been beneficial to you, that you will subscribe to the podcast, that you will share the podcast. And until next time, this is Dawn Platt. Make it a memorable day.
Thank you for joining us for the Disappearing Mind podcast. We hope it's helped you find clarity and support along your journey. Be sure to subscribe to never miss an episode. Visit our website to suggest future topics and share the podcast with friends and family.